Another one, and this one was more impactful, I think, was Writer. This is still a company. They provide AI writing assistance, and what they specifically provided was a testimonial and review service where they would write fake reviews for you, and you could submit them. So this was a place where the company was enabling others' deceptive actions or deceptive practices, and it wasn't actually the company themselves doing it. Because from if I in my house produce a fake review, there's nothing wrong with that. If I own a business producing a product and then I put a ton of fake reviews out there for it, then that is a problem. Like that falls under the consumer protection laws. And so it really, in addition to not just marketing malicious technology, you do need to have some safeguards that could prevent the misuse of it. Now, moving from the FTC, the EEOC, or the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, is really focused on algorithmic bias. And so this would be any form of bias for or against particular protected classes in hiring. Now, they have plenty of legal authority to do this. And one of the things that they've really hit on is that just because you do not understand the system and how it is working, that does not excuse you from discrimination. And so there's a real concern that any form of trained model will reflect previous discrimination practices and continue and lead into future violations. So something to keep in mind as there is a consideration around hiring and workplace management integrating AI. Another case study here is from the iTutor group, and this very much was a case of age discrimination. Like they had algorithms that straight up rejected applicants over specific ages, different for men and women, and that it was basically said it doesn't matter that you weren't the ones actively approving or rejecting. That algorithmic practice did mean that they had a legal liability. So that was a pretty small settlement, all things considered, at $365,000, but they definitely set a precedent with that case. And so in terms of if you're working as a federal contractor, there are some things to keep in mind. There are different OMB memos, that's the Office of Management and Budget, and those establish AI procurement standards. It is likely that the action plan is going to even streamline those standards or make some changes to it, but it's good to keep in mind. There's a strong preference for American AI, or ones that are to be built and trained within the US. All of the different organizations do need chief AI officers, so that will help with rollout. There is, like I said, there's the action plan is working to streamline procurement, and there is a requirement in the action plan to remove ideological constraints. Initially, when I read the action plan, I thought that might be in there as kind of a holdover from Musk's involvement in the administration. But I've kind of thought through it a little bit more, and I'm going to go on a little bit of a rabbit trail here. I don't think unbiasedness exists. I think there is a ideal notion that there is an unbiased AI model. It just reports the facts. It is Walter Cronkite on the evening news. But any sort of deployment of AI is a bias. One of the powers of the AI is that it can make decisions one way or another, and that involves a bias towards outcomes and decisions. And just kind of like at a fundamental level, I don't think it's possible for people to be unbiased because we're biased towards our own survival and best interests, just the way an ant is biased towards not being stepped on. Like, so they talk a lot about unbiased. I really think that this is more of an alignment with the administration's beliefs about certain topics rather than a true kind of trying to get to that neutral state. That's probably as politically statement-y as I'm going to get, and I tried keeping that as neutral as possible. And that leads us to how can we build these durable processes? So even though the AI RMF was called out for modification in the AI action plan, I do really believe it's a good foundation for building a durable process. And that's because it has really true bipartisan support. It is already being called out in legislation and regulation in the US and overseas, saying like this is a proxy for our own regulatory. So like if you comply with the NIST AI RMF, if you're doing that, then it's good enough for us. It was developed through consensus. A lot of effort went into it by a lot of different public and private organizations. And someone's at my front door. But the AI RMF, it's a solid set of documents and set of tools to help roll out risk management for AI. Now, I don't believe it is everything we need. That said, so there are 4 functions of it. There is the govern function where you work to establish your governance and accountability frameworks. And there's mapping where you kind of look to see what the AI is doing and its impacts, measuring it to make sure that you're keeping track of how things are changing for the better or for the worse. And then manage, which is around mitigating the risks, mitigating or avoiding, or all of the different risk management activities that you might do. So it is based upon the NIST risk management framework, which is foundational to risk management. So it's not a surprise, really, that this would build upon it. Now, where I think the EU Act really does well that the NIST AI risk management framework does not is in the definition of risk categories. So the EU AI Act does have a category known as unacceptable. This is for when there is an implication of human rights and freedoms. And so they are not allowed, for instance, to deploy manipulative AI or to get people to engage with a particular product directly with AI. Like there's a desire to make sure that the AI is not manipulating people. That would include like deployment of misinformation. But also making sure that like there's not widespread scanning of faces in a crowd by law enforcement, unless they have like caveats. Like if you might think of an event like the Olympics, it might be approved for that event because of like the unique circumstances of that. But don't expect like cameras everywhere to have facial recognition to track people. Beyond that is the high, limited, and minimal categories. And these are where most people are going to be working on AI. If you're working on social scoring, or if you're working on like emotion recognition, you're gonna like you've lost me. You're in the category these are technologies which are not really responsible for us to deploy AI to because of the ways in which they can be abused. But in kind of that high framework, there are a list of very strict structures that apply to high category AI, high risk AI, and then it kind of steps down from there. So I would highly recommend borrowing this taxonomy to triage AI systems internally. So you can easily say, as a company, here are the list of things we are not going to do with AI. We're not going to do automated hiring, firing, HR decisions, workforce management. We're not going to do automated review of resumes, even if that's something that is a concern. But then you move into high risk, and you might say it's high risk if it is facing the customer, if the customer has access to it. It is minimal risk if an employee is using it on their personal machine, and so on and so forth. And from there, you can design your governance standards and the requirements that you place upon the use of AI for those particular categories. And that integrates fine with those RMF things. So you could say, hey, we are going to set up those principles. We're going to give specific categories of use in our mapping. Then we are going to really say, like, here's what you need to measure and what you need to be concerned about in each of those, and give like a set of proportional risk controls to each of those categories. So I really am like the key here is durability, is the NIST AI RMF paired with these category systems, and looking to state regulation to say this is how we should integrate kind of the best practices that we're seeing emerge from the different states and organizations.